Now, when we talk about the gross domestic product, which is one of the very important indicators in any economy, what is this gross domestic product actually? So, the gross domestic product is nothing but the dollar value of the production. Note each word very carefully. The dollar value of the production that occurs within the nation's boundary. That means if something I'm importing from outside, that's not part of GDP. If it is part of the sales, it is not part of the GDP. It is the actual production. Now, how do I calculate the actual production? If I calculate the sales, then I know so many units, let's say 500 units were produced. Okay, of this 500 units, 200 units sold in the market. Now, if I know how many units sold in the market, that figure is itself not sufficient. I also need to find out the inventory at the individual stores and understand that there are 300 units more because there was a total production of 500 units. So, how much is produced? So, GDP, as I mentioned again, is an indicator of production. Now, as we would proceed with the GDP later, we would understand the difference between the real GDP and the nominal GDP. Extremely important topic. Expect at least one question from this section. So, when we focus on GDP, I repeat this again within the statements that dollar value of the production. So, it's first of all the dollar value, secondly it's for the production, and thirdly it is within the nation's boundary. Now, what do we understand with GDP? GDP implies more production. More the production, healthier economy, as simple as that. But understand one more aspect very carefully here itself, that always higher GDP does not mean higher production. Let's say in 2019, my GDP, I take a small figure for convenience, was $100. Now, in 2020, my GDP has turned out to be $120. I cannot absolutely say that this increase in the GDP is only because of higher production. There could be other factors as well. One important factor, price rise. If the prices have risen against the same commodity, then that would not say that my GDP has increased. What do I mean by that? Let's say I produce 5 units of pizza. Each unit of pizza costs $20 in 2019. Now, when I produce $5 units of pizza, each pizza unit costing $20, then in 2019, my total GDP was $100. But what happened in 2020? In 2020, the same 5 pizza are produced, but the rate has increased. Same pizza, rather than costing for $20 right now, is costing, let's say, $24. Now, if it is costing $24, what does that mean? My total GDP becomes 120 here, because I am multiplying the quantity with their price, but there has been no increase in the production. So, I cannot say GDP has increased. It was only the price that increased per pizza from $20 to $24. And therefore, my total GDP accumulated increased from 100 to 120. Clear? A very basic example, a very fundamental thing that's indicated here to help you understand that when we are measuring GDP, it's not just that with the increase in GDP, you always say that there is increase in the production. We also need to take into account the prices, and therefore we would understand what is real GDP and nominal GDP in a while later. Coming on to another important aspect of GDP. Now, let's say if I say the personal income of all the people of United States was somewhere around $18,602.3 billion, and the corporate income was, let's say, $2,000 74.6 billion. Now, these are just few of the figures of personal income and corporate income. Besides this, you have numerous other parameters that are added, and then we analyze the economic situation of the region. So what Bureau of Economic Analysis does in the United States? Bureau of Economic Analysis actually gives flash estimates of GDP. These flash estimates of GDP are given for every quarter, 12 months in a year. So every quarter of 12 divided by 4, every quarter of 3 months. So after 3 months, after a period of 30 days, when the quarter ends, so let's say first quarter is from January to March, so somewhere around 30th April, the first flash estimate would be released. Then the same goes for each quarter. So every quarter, the flash estimate for GDP are released. But however, those are prone to revisions. However, what we consider as a basis is the annual data. So annual data is considered more importantly in any economy. Now, if we talk about United States as an economy, in 2019, the GDP collection was somewhere around $21.4 trillion. Now, when we have a GDP of $21.4 trillion, you can understand that it would include production of each and every goods and services within the economy, from a small rubber band to huge supercomputers, fighter planes, production of various essential commodities, consumer goods, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, to track the production and sales, the statistician and analysts do the work continuously.